hoping you're ready to go. Can we take the roll call?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Stumpf?
Present.
President Redmond?
Here.
Director Dean? Here. And Director Sewell?
Here.
Okay, item 2 on our agenda is public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment? Please, sir. If you can come to the microphone, catch you on camera, too.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
My name's Al Duncan. I work with Fox Realty and Management in Valley Springs. I've been selling real estate and property management in Valley Springs area for about 33 years. I've never seen any issue coming out of San Andreas or here in the county courthouse that has caused such a stir in my area, in that business, as this changing where you're only sending the bill to the property owner. That has caused such confusion between the property owners and the tenants. How on earth did you people arrive at making that decision?
Just to head this off, I believe this is coming back before the board. We made a decision here a month or so ago. I don't know if it's gotten lost in the turmoil, but we're going to readdress this. And it was my understanding that we were going to have it agendized pretty quickly. So maybe we could get a status on when we're going to re-agendize this.
Okay, well,
But because, Al, because it's not on our agenda today, we really can't get into it and discuss it, but
what's
it
on the
will,
agenda today?
because it's not on the agenda today.
I know, I
we're-
just was, you want input, I'm trying to give you some input.
No, and you got your 5 minutes of comment, so,
Well, you've
and then we're gonna be, we're just not gonna be able to discuss it with you
Well,
today.
that's fine.
Okay.
You gave us 5 options that you guys were looking at. My broker and I have gone over this thing thoroughly, and the first 3 might work, but the bottom 2 don't work for us.
What is that paper you have in your hand?
I copied this out of something that I got saying that you're giving us 5 options, or you people were looking at 5 different options to make this.
We passed that, these guys passed that thing a few months ago. And,
Jeff, we're really not gonna discuss this here today.
well,
And so
I'm gonna say my part, because I'm not having a discussion with you guys. I'm trying to explain to him that this is gonna be coming back on our agenda.
This is public comment. It's time for the public to make comments, and we're not allowed
Whatever,
to.
Scott, go ahead.
We shouldn't be.
Go ahead.
But if you could talk to staff, have you spoke with staff about those?
Your gals that answer the phone alphabetically and all that silliness, very receptive, and in listening to their feedback, I'm getting negative from them verbally just by the tone of voice, that they're sick and tired of the tenant having to call or the owner having to call to figure out how to solve this issue.
Okay.
It's created havoc. I hate to say the word havoc, but it has.
Joel, are you aware of these 5 options? The 5 options that are on this sheet of paper?
I don't think I've seen that paper. I'm aware of some options to mitigate this issue.
Okay, and that's who we'll be talking to.
Somebody from here gave it to my secretary, the 5 options. I don't know where she got it, but she called here and got it from somebody up here.
Okay.
Again, this item is should be re-agendized. This board made a decision a month or so ago, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask staff where we are on that, putting this back on the agenda.
Okay, we'll get it back.
With that, that was on the number of issues that have popped up.
Am I the only one that was at that meeting?
And then Mr. Davidson, yeah, we were all at the meeting. He's telling you this will be a future agenda item.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay,
noted.
This is a different issue. When we have a house that doesn't have a tenant in it for 3 and 4 months, why does the bill rate stay the same? If the meter reader is out there, why can't you just go by what the meter says? Instead of having a $200 payment for a vacant house for 3 months, 4 months? What's the logic in that? If it's vacant for 3 months, PG&E doesn't charge anymore. Nobody's there. Telephone company don't charge anymore. Nobody's there. But you guys, 4 o'clock. So who do you talk to? Most
I'd be
places-
happy to address that with you
most
after.
places are open 9 to 5. Every business I know is 9 to 5.
Okay, again, it's another non-agendized
Yeah,
item, but you
I
can
know,
take
that's
take
fine.
it up
I'm
with
just
staff.
giving you my
M-
list of stuff after 35 years and 32 years. I think I deserve that. Please, and the suggestion we came up with was, when you guys decide what you're gonna do, if you could send with the bill that you're gonna send to the owner, put a little thing in there saying, this is how the tenant can get the information, and just have the owner forward it to them, or else you mail a separate one to the address of tenant, just put tenant on it, and saying, this is how you can call here and put it on your Bank of America card, or whatever you want to do, which is one of these 5 options here. And that resolves this conflict, because we don't like a situation where the tenant and the owner are talking to each other, trying to figure anything out. And you can see where that creates problems. And that's about all I've got to say. But, rates on the vacant units. Oh, and why did you use 8 to 4 instead of 9 to 5 hours? What's the logic in that?
What are you talking about?
The people who work here, they have 4 o'clock, there's nobody here to talk to. Why is that? Why aren't you here till 5 o'clock when most businesses are closing?
And you're acting as though you're going to get answers. We're going to be able to discuss this. Again, it's a non-agendized item, so I understand the question.
Yeah, well, isn't there a symbol, because we like it this way, or some
Yes.
asinine reason?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
That's exactly right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duncan. Okay, item 3, consent agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
My name's Bud Andrew, and I'm building a house up in Valley Springs, and I got an issue with this backflow venter. I don't have an issue with putting it in, but I have an issue with the material you use. It costs you $40 to put it in galvanized, $450 to put it in brass. That don't make any sense to me. Tell me why you gotta have it put in brass.
this is public comment time, sir. This is a non-agendized item. We're not going to be able to discuss it at the board level, but we can, have you approached staff and asked the question of our staff? Who would be better equipped to answer this? Have you gone to the counter or called on the phone first before coming to the board meeting?
They said, come to the board meeting, so here I am. Next, I want to say is, when I don't have it in and I'm going to pour a slab, why can't I have temporary water? Even DMV gives you a temporary day to move your car. Why can't I have water? The girl says to me, borrow it from your neighbor. What if your neighbor don't want it? She said, well, that's your problem then. That's not good work. That's not good etiquette. Third thing I got to say is, I had a meter on another lot I had. I don't know where it came from. I have no idea what it's about, but I haven't did my research on it yet. But the water company just come and took it. I don't think that's right either. Now, how do I know if somebody didn't pay for that water meter and I got a bargain? Well, I'm not hearing any answers.
This is a non-agendized item.
Come to the board meeting and here I am.
But we're prohibited by law because the public meeting laws, we're prohibited by law from getting into a discussion about an item that's not on this. And it's to ensure that the public, that we don't discuss an item and come to a conclusion on an item that the public didn't have a chance for input on. So this part, what this is for is basically to give us agenda items and for the public to air their concerns. And so I just want you to understand, we can't get into a lengthy discussion about this. We can direct you to staff and things like that, but we can't have a discussion where several board members get into the, whether there's support or don't of your ideas. We can direct you to staff members. We can certainly, I mean, I would ask, you know, what was this, you say a meter was taken by a water district employee. certainly that sounds like something you go to customer service, ask them to explain to you why that meter was taken, if it was taken by CCWD or not. You can ask for those things, but it's typically better to ask for them in writing. Then you can give it something like that to us. We can follow up on it and find out what the status is. I do know that our fire code, the material for the fire flow and the fire sprinkler thing is on our website. I don't know if that conflicts with what you're being told, but that is our current policy. Certainly, we'll take a look at the brass versus galvanized. There may be a reason, there may not be, you know.
I've been around, I go to Oakdale, I pull up their thing, I look, it's galvanized. Escalon, I live in Escalon, I pulled up theirs, these are city now, and it's galvanized. I went to Modesto, I pulled up theirs, it's galvanized. Now, why do we have to have brass? Why do I have to spend $400 more than I need to? That just don't make sense to me. I mean,
Yeah, that's
you
good.
guys need to address that one. You wrap it with 10 full mil, you got the same thing as brass.
We will. I'll just tell you, I've known Bud for 40 years. He's not speaking from lack of knowledge. He's been a plumber for 70 years in good standing. So, I mean, I'll definitely take it under advisement and see what we can do.
All right, that's it, my piece. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good morning.
Morning.
Bertha Underhill, ratepayer from Camp Connell. Stage 3 conservation that you voted on your last meeting. I just want to make sure, you know, you have Matt sitting there. Legally, that everything was done to notify whoever you had to notify the fact that you were implementing stage 3 in water conservation. So, because there have been several ratepayers up in Ebbets Pass who are saying, we never heard about it, but, you know, legally, they insist they have to be notified, and so I just want to make sure that we're covering our bases and everybody knows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further public comment?
I'd like to give a copy of this to somebody, and that's the 3 options that you select.
And that'd be great. Could you leave it with Mona?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 3, the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Item 3A, approve lease agreement for repeater site in Copperopolis. Larry?
It's on consent? Consent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any public comment on consent agenda? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Passed 5-0. Item 4, public hearing. Discussion action regarding the adoption of the fiscal year 2014-2015 operating and capital improvement plan budget. Jeff Meyer.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm going to fire up the laptop here. Monitors, just give me a moment.
Doesn't matter. Jeff took it. Yeah. Everything is under control.
I've been camping.
Oh,
Just got back yesterday.
Where'd you go?
I got time with the grandkids.
Oh, good. How's the water level?
It's not good. They're not letting anything out.
I'll be able to get over there tomorrow, but I got a lot of stuff to do today, so.
Okay.
That's the rationale.
Understood.
Our audio visual expert. today is twofold. One is we are requesting your board adopt the fiscal year 2014-15 operating budget and CIP budget, capital improvement budget, as well as a fiscal year 14-15 personnel allocation. There's two separate resolutions that we will be asking you to adopt. The proposed budget that we have before you today is the exact same as the preliminary budget I presented to your board last week, or 2 weeks ago. So, I believe Director Dooley, you were unable to attend that meeting. So I will go over briefly what we are proposing here, and then answer any questions from either the board or the public. The budget process that we have gone through is the same as we've done in years past. We start with goals set by your board. The individual departments submit their budget requests. We review them. We take a look at the staffing requirements of the district. Any new staffing positions are reviewed by myself and also the general manager and HR. We prepare the budget, take it to Finance Committee for initial review. They did that earlier, and I think it was June 5th. Then proposed or recommended that we bring the preliminary budget to the full board. I presented it to the full board on the 11th, and at that particular point in time, you recommended I bring it back here for adoption. And this is a public hearing in which we will adopt the budget. We are required to have our budget adopted by June 30th of the prior fiscal year, so we are within that requirement. Some of the budget assumptions. Revenues obviously help drive what we can afford to pay for. We have some issues that came up recently, as I mentioned in the last meeting, with the curtailment coming from DWR. We have to look at how that's going to affect our consumptive revenues. As you're aware, we collect base rates regardless of consumption. What we did in looking at this is figure out, and this is just an estimate, is that we're probably going to see a reduction of possibly 25% in our consumptive revenues, which in this case is about $360,000. This is a moving target. We'll know more as we go along, and if we find that our consumptive revenues are dropping, then we'll come back to your board probably in around the mid-year budget review and see if we have to make further adjustments at that particular time. But again, that doesn't preclude us from making reductions in expenditures on the fly. If we see things are coming in, revenues coming in significantly shorter, we can always tighten our belt. Property tax revenues, very minimal growth here.
There was just an article in the paper that they're projecting 6% increase.
For next year? Yeah, okay.
Just
Yeah, I was going off their previous one, so it looks like they're gonna have, and we'll see how that affects us once we get their property tax numbers in. It could help offset some of our lost revenues. The other part is we're looking at doing, again, an 85-15 split. This is differing from previous years. Last year we did 85-15, prior years 75% went to operating, 25 went into special projects. What we're doing at this particular point is, since revenues have been a challenge, we scaled that back to 85-15. If property taxes come in higher, we can maybe send more money to special projects, which we've been doing in the past. But basically $356,000 will go into this special project fund. We are going to get an additional $75,000 of one-time revenue this year, and that's associated with the Flying Acres Assessment District. This includes account establishment fees, water meter installs, and inspections. It does appear that we're going to take a hit on our New Hogan revenues because they're directly related to the amount of water that goes through the dam, and this is power generation revenues. We do augment our revenues by transferring in funds from either the the interest reserve account, that's the Fund 108, and from the expansion funds for debt service. In the 108 account, we're gonna pull in about 135,000 for water rights projects. This is an estimate at this point based on what we anticipate the project cost to be. We're also looking at assigning the cost of staff in actually working on our capital R&R and CIP budgets to have those costs moved out or funded, used to fund those projects. If we have a CIP project is approved by your board and if work is done on that by staff, obviously their time will be charged to it, the same way with our capital R&R. We've done several projects with in-house construction, which we've used to, and the R&R funds are used to pay for that staffing time. On debt service, we have several loans out. We have the BBVA loan, and that was the refunding we did in 2013 of that 2004 revenue bond. The costs associated with that debt service of the approximately $1.92 million of debt service, 600,000 of that is associated with the operating fund. The balance of that comes from our expansion funds. That includes the Jenny Lynn Water Expansion Fund, the Ebbets Pass Water Expansion Fund, the Copper Cove Water Expansion Fund, and the Copper Cove Sewer Fund. The reason for that is when we did some original refinancing in years past, we refinanced debt that was associated with those expansion funds. So they're obviously obligated to pay that portion of the debt service. Since our debt service obligation is paid for out of the operating fund, we move funds out of those expansion funds into the operating fund to cover their portion of debt service. That's why you see that transfer in. It's really not new revenue, it's just shifting funds from these expansion funds into there. We also have our capital R&R loans that we took out this year. And the capital R&R revenues that are coming in both for the water and sewer will go to pay for the $398,000 of the debt service for next fiscal year. That's a 7-year loan we took out at about 2% interest. And we also have $75,000 coming from the interest reserve account. That's the 108 account to pay for the debt service on this building. For the first few years, we are paying interest only on the $3 million loan, and then it is once the BBVA loan, the 2013 loan, matures in 17-18, we will use those. It is anticipated that we're going to be using those funds to pay down the debt as well, the principal as well. So we'll be at that point we'll be making principal and interest payments. Yes.
I have a question. When's the next time we have our investment report? Is that not until September?
No, the investment report will probably come at the August meeting because based on the schedule.
The reason I'm asking is at the same time, I'd like to see our reserve status, you know, what funds we have in the different reserve accounts and stuff like that.
I'm actually going to show you later on when we go through the CIP funds, the current fund balance in those expansion funds.
Okay.
Again, as I said last time, this is hard to read, but bottom line is this is how we have projected our revenues. Revenues come from rates, water and wastewater rates. We also have other operating funds such as fees, irrigation hydrant, water sales, some developer reimbursements. And then so those two, the rate revenues is about 11.7 million. Other operating funds is a little over 500,000. We have non-operating funds, which are standby fees. Some of the property tax revenues that we are assigning to the operating fund, and that's the bulk of it, about 2 million. We have some power sales, not only through New Hogan, but NCPA. And we also have a little bit of rental income. That's roughly 2.8 million. And if you look at that just in total, we have a little over $15 million of actual revenues coming in projected for next year. Now, I mentioned that we also use transfers in to augment some of the costs, and that's about $2 million. And that's specifically to cover debt service, the costs for the the BBVA loan, the capital R&R loan, and also for the debt service on the building itself, the interest only. Then we have some more, as I mentioned on the previous slide, $135,000 coming from the Water Rights Reserve Fund and the Interest Reserve Fund, and $181,000 for the capital CIP, capital R&R projects. So the total amount of funds we have available for fiscal year 14-15 is $17.1 million.
Bertha, you have a comment?
Yes, I have a question. You said for debt service, you're going to take $398,172 from capital R&R to repay Umpqua loan?
That's the capital R&R loan.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And that 398 is coming from where?
From the revenues that we collect from the capital R&R.
So for the entire year of 14-15, you're going to take, $400,000 out of the rate increase to pay on the Umpqua loan. Is that?
That is correct.
And how much is that leaving us?
What we have here is, when your board adopted the rates, the funds that were associated or assigned for the capital R&R, the rate increase, was to go for two things and two things only. The actual cost of doing the projects themselves, and since we didn't have enough funds up front to jumpstart this process, and because we couldn't do the pay-as-you-go process, your board and we decided to take out a loan of $6.3 million, $4 million for water, $2.3 million for sewer. The R&R rates that we receive can only be used for the projects themselves and the debt service associated with that loan. So what we are looking at this particular point in time is the monies that we collect, $400,000 for next year, will be used for the debt service. And that still leaves us quite a bit of money available for it, but remember, we also now have that loan dollars available for us. And in talking to Bill Purley, Director of Utilities and Engineering, he's going to be going forward to the Engineering Committee, showing you the schedule of the project. We have some large projects that are upcoming, the Reach 3A, which I'll talk about later in the CIP section, Copper Cove, Lift Station 22, which is going to require a significant amount of capital up front, and that's what the debt service helps pay for the loans and those dollars.
We got another question.
In a discussion I was having with somebody, there seems to still be a lot of confusion as to standby fees, what they represent, who should be paying them, who should not be paying them. One theory is that everybody within the different, like in the Pass area where I live, all the properties pay it, whether they're on the system or not. In my case, we pay monthly to sewer and water. But we're still also paying a standby fee on top of it. Is that the way it's supposed to be?
The standby fees has been set by a board resolution each year, and I don't have direct knowledge, or I can't remember exactly what are the boundaries for each particular standby fee, but there are people who, yes, pay those standby fees and pay rates.
Okay, so that is a correct.
It depends on which area you're talking about, because we had a number of different service areas that have standby fees.
Right, because it was established under 9102 and apparently has been modified several times since then and then redone on a yearly basis. So I don't think anybody knows what's going on, so we might somehow try to find out what exactly the standby fee is and who should be paying it or not paying it. So that's my question.
And I do believe that in an upcoming meeting, that standby fee will be brought back to your board, and that would be the appropriate time for the discussion.
Okay. What's the agenda item going to be?
It's an annual agenda item that goes before your board to reauthorize the standby fees.
Okay. And that'd be a better time to discuss that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to move on to expenditures at this particular point. Salaries and benefits. we're gonna be reducing 2 FTE from the district, going from 66 to 64. These are 2 positions where the incumbents have retired and we're not filling them, so we're reducing the FTE count. PERS rates are going up, and they will continue to go up for a number of years. Part of it is due to their changes in their actuarial methods, their mortality rates, their smoothing process, and also their pooling status. And it's going up 1% this year. They don't project, they don't give you definite numbers for future years, but the numbers we're seeing at least is a % increase each year. And this is the employer share of PERS, not the employee share, but the employer share. The employee share, as you are aware, over the years, the employees have been picking up their cost of, or a percentage of the cost each year. It's been rolled in over a 3-year process. The first year in 12-13, employees picked up 25% of the employee share. As of this current fiscal year, it's 50%. For 14-15, the employees will be picking up 100% of the employee share of the PERS costs. So that's one way that we're actually seeing a decrease in benefit costs because of that. We do see that medical insurance costs, I had projected about 5%. PERS has come out with some recent information that said PERS medical costs are going down. Well, that's for some of the programs, not for the ones that we're involved in. Some of that was Blue Shield and Kaiser. Our costs were just under 5%, but the difference is minimal. It's immaterial as far as this budget is concerned. Some of the items that we're looking at moving forward to add to the budget for this year is we do have elections of 4 board members, the general election. We are estimating about $40,000 for that. We also have a general manager recruitment. We are estimating $35,000.
We have a question.
Couple of questions. You say the PERS employer rates increased to 16.69%. Do you have a money amount on that?
That's 1% of salaries, and I can get that for you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, I'd like to know that one.
Yes.
Your board of directors, the last time you said that it was 49%, $49,000? Because it was $40,000 for the election, and then you said $9,000 for miscellaneous or whatever.
Right, and I'll get to that. These are just large dollar amount that are changes. I'm not showing each and every.
$10,000 is pretty.
I will get to that.
Okay, and then under your general manager recruitment, are you employing or are you contracting with a headhunter for operation or a management search team or whatever?
We're looking, yes, that is one of our options that we're looking at. The decision hasn't been made yet.
Oh, okay, but we're projecting it's gonna cost us $35,000
We-
for the general manager.
We've budgeted that amount. It could.
An estimate on the 1% increase is about $51,000,
51,000?
approximately.
Thank you.
It's gonna be a real fun election.
Utilities, we are anticipating a 5 cent per kilowatt hour increase from CPPA. It could go higher.
0.5?
Pardon me?
0.5?
0.5. I said 5 cent, I'm sorry, 0.5, half a cent increase. And that's approximately $60,000. They are going to be using some reserves to help offset that, but that decision won't be made
Till the July meeting.
till the July meeting. If they do decide to raise it to a full penny, we're going to have to.
What drives them to raise their costs? I mean,
There's 3 basic components. One is the price of power from Western Area Power Administration, the transmission of power through Cal ISO, and then PG&E local distribution costs.
Material and supplies are going up by $40,000 for UV bulbs on the wastewater side. And we're looking at least a $50,000 increase for state and federal water sewer fees. Water resources, in the water resources budget, we've Looking at a $40,000 increase for North Fork project legal costs, as well as $93,000 in professional services for water rights extension and the North Fork project. A number of our permits and for extension, and we have to start working on those, and that's what these costs are associated with. We also have some mandated plans that are coming down the pike here. The Urban Water Management Plan update to 2015. This would probably be a 2-year process. We're setting aside $65,000 for the Urban Water Management Plan update. I'm sorry, $50,000 for the plan update and $15,000 for an inundation study, and this is related to the Copper Cove, Lock Antenna.
Lower Pond.
Lower Pond.
Got a question.
Yes.
Question I have, under utilities, CCPA cost increase. How do those fees from CCPA compare to straightforward PG&E? Roughly.
I think the standard commercial rate was, trying to think of their Schedule A, it was 13 cents. I'd have to look it up. I can find it online, but they're significantly less. We save,
Is it like half or something?
I think it may be less than half, but
Okay.
yeah. If you find their Schedule A commercial, you can make a comparison.
I had a question on your figure here, the CPPA cost increase of $60,000, they have parentheses, $0.05 per kilowatt. Shouldn't that, if it said it was a 0.5%, shouldn't that be?
That's a 0.5 cent increase. 0.5 cent increase. It should be 0.5.
0.005.
It should be 2 zeros.
Yes.
Pardon?
Should be 2 zeros in front of that. You caught that, yes.
Okay,
It's a 0.5 cent increase.
all right.
One more question, Jeff.
Water rights, are you still in the process of looking for a water rights expert, or you're going to be depending on Downey Brand to?
The water program's manager position is still in the budget.
It's still.
Yes, it is.
So
It's
we're-
funded in the budget.
That's not a water rights, it's not a water rights attorney that we're looking for. We have a water rights attorney.
Right, you're looking for a water rights expert.
There's a difference between legal process
Right,
and
yeah,
understanding,
no, no.
yes.
We're looking for a water resource
Yes.
staffer. It's not necessarily water rights, it's a different subject.
Under non-departmental, we've moved some of the costs that were previously in the admin services budget, which included the general manager, assistant general manager, HR and such. We moved it to non-departmental because it benefits the entire district. Those are building expenses, claims, JPIA insurance. So we've moved those over to non-departmental. Retiree health costs, we project to go up $76,000. Part of that is we have more retirees now, because people have retired, plus the increase in health costs, health insurance costs.
Jeff? They sent out a questionnaire to everybody in the district regarding their married status and their children and everything else.
Yes.
Are we anticipating that those numbers may drop just by virtue of that audit?
No, I don't think so, not for employees.
Okay.
We project an increase in our JPIA property and liability insurance by about $34,000. And that's an increase from budget for last year, not necessarily actuals. And debt services, which is housed in non-departmental, is going up by $398,000. That's the capital R&R loan that we have to apply. We do have included in this year's budget some capital outlay projects and equipment. We're looking to replace 4 trucks. We're going to continue to have SCADA upgrades, and this is something that's a recurring item through the years. PRV upgrades of about $10,000, guard valve replacement of $10,000, and some minor lift station upgrades of $40,000. The larger projects that once were included in this capital outlay project budget are now being covered by capital R&R funding. And if we find any projects that's $50,000 or more is actually a CIP budget, and we find that now in the CIP budget. So I'll be going over that in a minute or two. So looking at expenditures here, we have about $8.2 million in salaries and benefits, services and supplies, about $6.3 million, capital outlay of $220,000. As you can see, that's a $400,000 decrease from last year, and debt service is going up by about $316,000 to a total of $2.4 million. Our proposed expenditure budget, operating budget, is $17,129,373. That's approximately $250,000 more than last year's budget. And some of the items that I bullet pointed previously are new items to the budget this year that help or are part of that $250,000. Now, down to the individual departments. The board of directors' budget is going up $49,000. $40,000 of that is one-time expense for elections. And $9,000 is an increase in per diems and medical insurance costs. And I do anticipate too that we will, and I'm presuming here, but I've heard that Mr. Dooley is not going to run for next year. Is that correct? And if that's the case, we are going to incur the full cost. I'm projecting to have the full cost of medical insurance for the new director, and that's part of the significant increase in this. I just have to assume that the next year the individual will be getting full insurance. Director Dooley is not getting full insurance. Yes.
Is it best to, in regards to the elections, I mean, are we required to only budget for that during the election years? Or is that something that we should put a little away each year? Save up for it, so to speak?
You're talking about the election costs?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we budget for it. We don't have any carry.
It's not big enough to make that significant of a
Not at this
difference.
point, especially since in fiscal year 15, 16, there's only, I believe, 2 seats that are going to be up for election.
When you enacted that lining up of the elections, you said that we were going to save some money by doing that, remember? By
Quite a bit of-
changing the years that you elected.
Yeah, quite a bit of money.
directors. I'd like to certainly get a readout afterwards to find out if, yes, in fact, you did save money by doing that.
The general management, this is the old administrative services, and as I mentioned in the last meeting, we're having a little bit of a name change and shifting of responsibilities. General management includes the general manager, the assistant general manager, the clerk to the board, and HR functions. So we're just consolidating it down to those functions. That's why you see a decrease in the budget in that area, because we've shifted a number of costs into non-departmental. Engineering and technical services, we do have funding for a district engineer in that position, in that budget. We also shifted one individual from engineering over to admin services, and that's Robbie Creamer, who does a lot of outreach and customer service with new connections and such. He's been moved up towards the customer service area. Administrative services is a combination of finance, customer service, and my own little group. That's why you see an increase in there, because we've had some staff members come over to that area. We handle facilities as well as IT and so forth. Utility services, you see a decrease of $711,000. The bulk of that comes from the capital outlay budget that was decreased last year from about $418,000, also shifting of a couple employees and also some retirements. And then water resources, we do have a couple special projects that we're working on, water rights extension, airport project, and that's why the budget went up for water resources. And non-departmental, I've gone over that ad nauseum, and the increase is basically because of shifting costs and higher debt service related to the UMCA loan. Now, the bottom line, this is what everybody likes to look at. Revenues, less expenditures, and we're looking at a minimal surplus of $4,000. In basic terms, we're looking at a balanced budget.
How did last year turn out in regards to our estimate?
We don't know yet. We're still paying bills and collecting revenues. We still have,
Got another month.
Monday is the last day of the fiscal year.
Are we on track?
I think we're on track. It does take time to close out the fiscal year, so we've got pretty much the month of July to pay for bills that were incurred and services that were incurred in June.
You know, it's funny, the public always, likes to, have the education on the front end, but they never come and ask about how it really came out.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny. That seems like the important question.
And we, as usual, we do have an outside auditor coming in who will perform an audit and will be able to provide not only staff, but your board with the final numbers. And we're also going to be able to give you updates once we close out the books. Any questions on the operating budget at this point?
I just have one concern. I know that we have some retirements coming up, and I know we're gonna have some of this discussion later, so I won't get into it too much, but, is $35,000 enough for, because we just have it as a general manager recruitment. Should we have a different category for recruitment? We have, operations manager, perhaps retiring one of these days. We're looking for a district engineer, we're looking for this water resources staffer. Does staff feel that we can hire those positions without recruitment?
We do have a budget for recruiting for our regular positions.
Oh, okay, we do.
Yes,
How much is in that?
$5,000, and a lot of that recruitment is done in-house. Now, we've done the bulk, I believe, the bulk.
Can I get invited to that party then? Because, what do you do with it if it's in-house?
Well, there's
Oh, I see what you're saying.
There's advertising costs.
All right, so
Is when we go and post such.
Just a
as
newspaper
Ralph
article.
Caldwell, CSDA, and the other.
Well, I'm just wondering if some, particularly the operations manager position is a pretty important aspect, and I want the board to consider whether or not we need to be up our recruitment levels for that spot, and if there needs to be money set aside for that recruitment. And I don't know if we can talk about that later or not, Matt, in the closed session item or not. We have a general manager recruitment. Well, it's not, so I guess, so I'm asking a question. Have we really considered the replacement of our Pearlie, for instance? And it's a pretty important spot.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
great. There is not a clear time frame established, though, for starting that sort of proceeding.
And it may not even be this budget year. Are you looking to put money away for that still? Is that,
Well, I would prefer that there was some overlap in that position. I hate to see somebody come in and just, be given Bill's immaculate office and told to go with it. I think that there's some overlap might be appropriate. So anyway, I'll just leave it. I don't want to discuss it at length, but I just think that we need to have that discussion and figure out what we need to do. Be a little proactive in that position, because I think it is a very critical spot for our district.
Larry, what would be appropriate committee to start that discussion?
I don't know that you need to appoint a committee for that discussion.
Okay. We'll consider that as a future item. We do have a question on the floor.
Yeah, not having had a chance to study this in great detail, but the whole idea of austerity within this agency has come up on agenda items several times in the last few months. And going through and listening to your presentation, is there anything other than the fact that you budgeted 2 less employees? Is there any other austerity considerations that are in here that I can't see quickly?
One of the items that saved us money was the employees picking up the full employee share of their PERS. That's about $200,000 in savings. And then we're reducing our capital outlay budget. But the biggest bottom line here is we're not increasing budgets even though so as costs go up, we're only looking at significant increases such as particular projects when it comes to water resources, water rights extensions and projects, and electrical costs, CPPA, and UV bulbs, and obviously the election. But everything else, people have to live with basically within their existing budgets. So they're going to have to they're going to have to maintain their cost level, even though individual prices for those individual components are increasing.
So there are some austerity considerations built into it, because the reverse would be if they're not, you had already predicted within a year or two, we would be in a deficit spending without a rate increase again.
We are looking to, as we go forward, that the next 2 years are going to be challenges, and we're going to have to look at more austerity measures. But part of that process is going to be incorporating the ideas of the new general manager. Right now, since all we do is adopt a 1-year budget, that's what we're focusing on now. However, that being said, we are putting in place measures that do help keep costs down. And the PERS cost is one of them, the employee cost. That's a cost that the district will no longer have to absorb, is the employee share of it. And that can be significant. That's about $400,000 a year.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there were some considerations in there, so we're not in a deficit almost overnight without knowing it.
Right.
We do have another rate increase coming up in September, don't we?
The rate increases for capital R&R programs only.
Yeah.
The monies that were approved within the rate increase for each of the next 3 years is only for capital R repair and renovation projects. It does not go to the operating budget. So that's why we have to keep within those revenue streams.
But you have it reflected in here.
No,
No, you don't.
no, it's in the CIP budget because it's not part of the operating budget.
So
You did have 181,000.
But that's showing the cost that staff have on the projects. If staff is going to be working on those projects, the operating fund needs to be reimbursed for the time. And so that's what is done. The lift station 9, 10, 11, Poker Flat, staff did a significant portion of that work. So the fund, capital R&R funds were used to help to reimburse us just salary and benefits. Either that or we'd have to hire outside work and it would cost us as well. Okay, our CIP program, our capital improvement program. Director Dean, you asked about some of the expansion fund balances. This is as of May 31st, the different water expansion funds and the sewer expansion funds. Up top, first one is West Point Water, about 180,000. Ebbets Pass Water, 1.7 million. Jenny Lynn Water, as we've said over the last couple of years, there is not enough money in the Jenny Lynn Water Expansion Fund to pay for its debt service. That's why you see a negative. At the end of the year, monies will be transferred from the Special Project Fund out of the Interest Reserve Fund over to cover this deficit. But we wait until the year end is closed because we may still get some capacity fees that are deposited in this account between now and Monday. And then Copper Cove Water is about 2.7 million in there. On the wastewater side, Forest Meadows at about 273,000, Valdecito about 1,000, Arnold Sewer about 270,000, Lock and Tennis Sewer 245, Copper Cove Sewer just under 600,000, and West Point Sewer about 226,000. So that's as of May 31st.
Additionally, though, what I was asking about was also, the funds still available in the water rights reserve?
That we will have once we close out the fiscal year and post all the interest that's in there.
Okay, well, that's the reason I brought up when the next time was that we were having
When we do the next investment report, which I believe will be in August,
yeah, that's when I'd like to see the reserve.
we will have that as well.
Okay.
So remember about expansion funds. Expansion funds can only be used to pay down debt associated with prior expansion or expanding the system. It cannot be used for operating expenditures. So they are very restrictive. Under water projects, we've got some new projects, and this, if maybe easier to refer you to the budget handout packet on pages 15 and 16, which is our water CIP budget and our wastewater CIP budget. But I just wanted to go over some of the projects. In a CIP budget, you're looking at projects $50,000 or more, and they generally last over a year, 1 or 2 years, because within a CIP, you actually go through planning, design, environmental, then you go out to bid and actually do the construction. So a number of these projects takes 1 to 3 years to complete, especially when we're looking at seasonal building conditions up at the pass and at higher elevations. One of the new projects that we put in there is the Jenny Lynn AB transmission line, and this is just for the design phase. We're going to start designing for that project. Some carryover projects, that's the Redwood Tank Replacement Project. That's where we're getting grant funding from Cal OES. Ebbets Pass Reach 3A pipeline. This is money that we're asking for in 14-15 budget. If there's, this does not include any money that's already been appropriated in 13-14. If there's any money that's left over in 13-14, it'll just roll over in the project budget. This is new money we are asking for. So it's $3.5 million for the Reach 3A because we anticipate starting construction in calendar year 15 on that. Tank management plan, this is our review of all our tanks, our water storage tanks, to see how we can coordinate and do an effort in refinishing them or upgrading them. We just got finished recently with the Jenny Lynn Clearwell, and that was one of the slide presentations I had when we went through the rate study to show the condition of that Clearwell, and that's up and running and completed. We're looking at some Ebbets Pass Tech Eye pipeline replacement. We're trying to scope that out to see how much of the pipeline needs to be replaced at this particular point in time based on need. And I apologize, I did this again, I forgot to take this out. That Jenny Lynn AB transmission line to carryover, that should not be in that slide. But then we also have the Flying Acres Improvement District that's ongoing right now that they believe will be, construction should be completed by the end of July. And that's being funded entirely from the proceeds from the assessment district, the property owners within Flying Acres. Wastewater projects. Under new projects, Vallecito Storage Pond Expansion. That's grant funding from Prop 84 money, round 2 implementation grant. We're looking at a new project to do some upgrades to the Avery Main Lift Station. Carryover projects are the Copper Cove Reclaim Permit. Bill Purley is out now meeting with the State Water Resource Control Board personnel to see if they will approve some of our proposals, which could substantially lower the cost of that overall project. We had originally anticipated the project in the $4 or $5 million range. It could come down significantly, but we should know here fairly soon. We're setting aside $250,000 for some initial construction costs. West Point Wilseyville consolidation, we're working on that. We're hoping to secure a grant from State Water Resource Control Board to be able to consolidate those operations over in West Point. Forest Meadows, Forest Main, some initial money, some design money at $100,000. Copper Cove Lift Station 22 replacement, $1.2 million. Bill believes that we're going to go out to bid August, September, and maybe start construction late this year, early next year. and then the Copper Cove lift station 15 and 18 electrical. We are going to do some capacity plan updates, which are for Copper Cove and Lock and Tenant. It's not a full master plan update, it's to take a look at the capacity fees and see if they're still in line. Now, if you look at the schedule I have prepared for you to review, I'd like to go over the funding sources for both the water and the wastewater. Unfortunately, the size of that schedule wouldn't fit on a PowerPoint slide. So I'm looking at this on page, we'll do water first, page number 15, this schedule right here.
We had a question?
One question. Back on the Evans Pass second water line replacement, the Evans Pass Route 1 water line replacement, the comment you made was based on need?
For the tech.
Yes, okay, so.
Bill Early is going to be looking at that tech line and seeing where the breaks have been and seeing what sections actually do need to be repaired. Because if we are not experiencing breakage in certain areas, the question then comes up, should we replace it? And that's a decision that engineering and utilities make.
Okay, because there hasn't been a break in 2 or 3 years, and
Yeah. There are some sections of it he anticipates still should be replaced.
I thought it was very interesting that they went in, surveyed it, and then I believe I said last time that it snowed, so all of their markings were gone.
I'm not aware of that. This schedule. The key item here is under cash flow fiscal year 14-15, the amount of money that we're going to be budgeting for on the water side. At the bottom, the combination of new and carryover projects is $7,289,160. That's what your board is being asked to adopt for the water CIP budget. On the funding side, those are the columns over on the right-hand side, you can see that we're going to be using about $334,000 in reserves. That's the amount of money that's going to be the district's portion of the Redwood Tank project. Because it's a 25-75 mix. Under the capital R&R program, we're looking at about $4.6 million to fund the projects that Evans Pass Reach 1A or 3A project, some of the tank management project, some of the TechI, and also the Reach 1. And that's the design portion of the project. Grants, the Redwood Tank, you're looking at $870,000. And then outside /AD, that's the assessment district funding that's going to go towards the Flying Acres project. Yes?
Why wouldn't the Redwood Tank replacement fall under capital R&R?
Which one? The Redwood Tank?
Yeah.
Because when we did this project initially and applied for the grant, we identified project funding out of the special project fund for the match. And this was years prior to the rate increase in the capital R&R program. So that's the guideline, that's what we identified in the grant application.
If that's the criteria, wouldn't a lot of our projects that we identified in the past not fall into R&R then?
A number of the projects that we had done previously, if we had R&R money, yes, they would have been R&R. But we did not have the funds at that time when we applied for the grant. So we specifically identified in the resolution that we would use matching funds from the special project fund. And now I'm following that resolution.
Okay.
Any questions on the water side?
Well, Don raises a good question. And what I'd be curious about is, if we want to hold money in our special projects fund for special projects, why wouldn't we come back with another resolution that would expend the new R&R funds to pick up on that?
I would have to see if can be done through the grant process if they would accept that. And I'm not saying they can't, but we have signed documents that have identified it to this date. We can always go back and look at that. Right now, so that's something staff can look at.
You know, my concern is, we pulled down these reserves and we don't have no mechanism to replenish them. And reserves are critical, especially with all the uncertainty we're dealing with. And I think if there's another way of addressing that issue, I'd like to at least explore it.
We can look into that. On the sewer side, we're looking for $2,280,000 in projects funding for fiscal year 14-15. Of that, 40,000 is coming from the expansion funds to cover the capacity plan updates. Just under 1.7 million is for capital R&R, and we are receiving $130,000 in grant money for the West Point Wilseyville consolidation project. If that project goes to construction, we will be looking for grant money from that as well. We have not gotten to that point yet. We're still going through the engineering side, and then it has to be submitted to the state, and at that point, we'll move forward with the grant application. So the total CIP budget, water and sewer combined, is $9,569,160. At this point, I'll entertain questions. Yes.
I want to really compliment you again on your chart 1516. I'd really like to see that on the webpage. This is the most transparent chart that we've produced in a long time, especially regarding cash flow and where the funding's coming from. This clearly tells everyone exactly where the money's being spent and where the money's coming from. So I applaud you for this 1516.
Thank you. And one of the processes I've been going through recently and working with Bill and Charles is the scheduling of the projects moving forward for this next 24 to 36 months. So we can look at cash flow requirements. And I believe he's taking that to the next engineering committee meeting for approval. Once that is approved, then I can also go back and take this format and show and use this as a tool when I'm reporting on my capital R&R budgets. But I want to make sure that we know what those projects are moving forward. We only have another 5 days for the rest of this fiscal year, but there's still going to be bills being paid up and through the end of July. So once we have all those bills paid, I can come back and give you a recap of fiscal year 13-14 capital R&R.
Who is doing our audit this year?